You're listening to The Voice of Dog. This is Rob McWolf, your fellow traveler, and today's story is Toad at Toad Hall by Tempe O'Kun, who is the staff writer at Culturally Eft and the writer of the Windfall and Six's Wild series by Fur Planet Productions. You can find more of his stories on his Furfinity or his SoFurry account. Read by Khaki, your faithful fireside companion. Please enjoy Toad at Toad Hall by Tempe O'Kun.
Toad Bridge. Autumn leaves clung to branches, resolute but fragile in the face of the coming winter, like the final bar of mobile phone signal. Badger, Toad, and Mole sat together in the splendor of Toad Hall. Rat paced the polished floor, his supple tail, which normally echoed the gentle curves of the river, now ran straight with unabashed annoyance. Now and then he sat down at the great wooden table, laden with silver dishes and fine foods, only to spring up again to return to his fidgety ambulations. Toad emitted a groan that bubbled up through his sugar-free fizzy coconut water. "Oh, Ratty, are you still on about that silly old yacht?" The rodent pointed out the window to the ship, run aground on the inland estate. "It was yesterday." "Ah!" The sharply dressed amphibian blinked dully. "Perhaps so. Well, the past is prologue, as they say, and nobody bothers with a book's prologue. You've entirely halted all traffic on the river. Do keep your vibes positive, old thing." Toad closed his eyes with an assumed serenity. "I am trying to enter ketosis." Badger looked up from pouring a Scotch whisky, laid in the cellar by the previous Mr. Toad. "I haven't a clue what that is. What's more, I'm quite certain you don't either." "Ketosis!" Their host hopped to his feet. "The ketogenic diet. It's when you rev up your brain's functioning by refusing to eat hydrocarbons." "Carbohydrates," Rat corrected him automatically, his keel still uneven. Mole patted his boyfriend's paw. "This is Toad we're talking about. He may run on petrol." The rodent smiled a little at the remark. His spoon made exploratory voyages into a square of steak and kidney pie, bounded at the edges by a cauliflower crust. "Whatever!" Toad waved his fork, sprinkling the floor with cream sauce. "You embargo the old carbos, then your brain burns oil instead. Terribly efficient. Good luck igniting a potato, but throw a match on some oil and whoo, goes up in a flash. Now isn't that what you want happening in the old noggin?" The stocky mustelid fished out a whiskey stone from the fog-puffing dry ice contraption that had taken up residence at the dinner table a few months back, after waiting unopened in its box for a year by the front door. The frozen stone plunked to the depths of the drink and curled cold currents throughout. "Toad, you have quite enough combustion on the brain already." "I can feel it working. The keto, you know." Toad wiggled webbed fingers in the air. "Surely you've noticed. I'm much less carbonated." "I'd say you're as bubbly as ever." Mole gave a reassuring smile. "Effervescent, really." "Oh, Mole, do follow along. I've detoxified all the carbs from my body." The aristocrat struck a noble pose, one well practiced in his selfies. "It's what gives me such a healthy glow." Rat spread pink fingers on the oak table. "So how will you put that healthy glow to use getting your blasted yacht out of the river?" "Hmm?" Toad looked up from disposing of his coconut water in the fireplace. "Can't say I've given it much thought. Blasting might do the trick, though. Where does a chap buy torpedoes? Rat, I shall require the use of your boat for an evening." The rodent squeaked, aghast. "I'd rather send you out on an ice floe." Toad rolled his eyes. "No need to be nippy. I'll borrow Otter's boat. Surely you could fit a torpedo or two. I've seen the size of his family's picnic lunches." Badger cleared his throat. You can't torpedo your yacht in the middle of the river, Toad. I'd say I jolly well can. I paid for the thing, and it outlived its useful life. Decommissioning from the fleet, they call it. Fire the scuttling charges, maximum yield. Full spread, engage! Pew-pew! Ha-ha! He rocked back in his chair, nearly tipping over. The distinguished mustelid shook his head. It is loaded with fuel. And champagne. Mole raised a glass. Toad swept a flipper at them, explaining the concept slowly. Those ought to make the blast all the more impressive. Badger interlaced his fingers and leaned his bulk forward. It'll pollute the ecosystem. And get it drunk. Molly paused and looked to the river rat, as if to gain aquatic habitat knowledge by osmosis. If that is how fish work. Undeterred, their host scoffed. But surely the fish won't mind once it sinks and becomes a coral reef. Ah, you see? The amphibian tapped a finger to his temple. Ketosis! I'm thinking up gale force brainstorms. Badger and Rat weathered the stormy brainwaves, casting each other commiserating looks. Mole sniffed about the dining table. Excuse me, but have we any noodles left? Noodles? Toad indulged in a little chuckle at the idea of pasta. Who eats noodles anymore? Carb shoelaces, that's what they are. Oh, I suppose. Molly nodded along, eyeglasses wobbling. What do we put the sauce on instead? With theatrical panache, Toad snatched the silver cloche from a serving tray of pinkish-brown matter. Manzo-Getty branded 100% pure beef noodle replacement food product! Up on his tiptoes, Mole managed enough height to look into the chafing dish, warmed by a tiny silver toad figurine holding up an actual flame. He tilted a claw at the contents. They're a bit worm-like, aren't they? Not that I'm objecting. Why, my grandmother— Hurriedly, Toad swallowed a mouthful of Keto cuisine to make room for a mouthful of words. Mole, I'd never wish to offend your grandmother's worms, but I am in the midst of an explanation. Oh, quite sorry. He scooped a portion onto his plate with a pasta ladle. Do continue. Double beef stroganoff, Toad proclaimed it to the heavens, or at least the quadcopter drones lodged in the rafters. Named after the famous chef Beef Stroganovsky. Badger tutted. Toad, you cannot go about adding ski to names that already have an of, unless you're talking about a prince who rules over a person who is from Strogan. I can feel it! I'm ketosizing, by Jove! Toad patted himself down for medical miracles. Wait, no. Just my mobile vibrating. Oh, bother and blow. He slumped, dejected, in his chair. Unswayed, the greying mustelid sampled the extra beefy stroganoff. Tastes quite decent, really. But you are, nonetheless, responsible for that yacht. You had it delivered without checking if it could turn around in the river. Oh, the river, Ratty groaned. I'm allowing nature to reclaim it. Kindest thing, really. Toad stuffed a massive bite of non-pasta noodles into his mouth and spoke around it. No one will interfere with the old girl while she returns to her elements. The local children are skipping across it on the way to school. Rat emerged from his river revelry. I heard them call it Toad Bridge this morning while I was assessing the damage. Toad Bridge! Oh, I rather like that. Toad stroked his chin. Past due for someone to name a bridge after me. Weasel bite. The green of spring had returned to ancient oaks, their foliage rustled by songbirds, passing down songs just as old to their young, accompanied here and there by the whir of wayward quadcopter drones amid the boughs. In Toad Hall, the master of the house led his friends in a procession to the full-sized tower personal computer, blinking and humming under the sprawling mahogany desk. A curved LCD display swept along the dark surface in a gentle arc, festooned with countless desktop icons. "Now gather round, you lads, gather round the warm glow of ye old Toad mainframe. I present to you the newest wonder of our computational era, WeaselByte. Jolly ingenious, compresses all your files into one bit." Toad clicked far more times than was necessary. "Ha! There it goes! You see? 2 terrible bytes into one little nibble of a bit." Ratty blinked at the screen, where 2 terabytes of data had just vanished. Just 1 bit, as in a 1 or a 0. "That's very impressive, Toad," Mole added, manicured claws on his chin. "But how does it know how to, well, turn it back into your data?" The amphibian aristocrat puffed up beside his PC. "Well, it unstuffs all that from inside the bit, naturally." Mole fidgeted. "I'm afraid, though, I don't see how it could do it, when all you're left with is a single 1 or 0. "Oh, Moly. Perhaps the bits of your computer can only hold a 1 or a 0, but I have the finest computer bits money can buy. There's the typing bit, the screen bit, all manner of blinky bits that tell you when things are happening. The man at the shop said this computer had quite a lot of different bits. I imagine the bulk of them are very small and tucked away inside the box part. 64 bits in all, he said, yes." "Pity you opted for a 2-bit compression app." Ratty munched another of the crackers. Casting his gaze away, power user Toad flipped his scarf with unrivaled melodrama. "Me? Whoo!" "The cheese and cracker tray is top-notch, however." The rodent gave a refined flourish of his pink paw. "Try sprouted rye, Badger." The sturdy mustelid accepted the cracker. "What Mole is rightly concerned about is whether you'll be able to decompress your files ever again." Yes, this is quite good with the monster." "Of course my files are safe." Toad slapped a webbed finger onto the monitor. "It even says OK next to all of them, right there for all to see." Badger adjusted his spectacles. "That is the file size, Toad. It says 0K, as in 0 kilobytes." "Come again?" The older gent ran a paw down his face stripes. "Toad, you've compressed your files into a black hole, a computational singularity from which they can never return." "But I have had them return." "Granted, I got impatient and paid to have the process boosted. Cost me a pretty penny each time, but I am a busy fellow. Time is money. Little progress, said it would take years otherwise." He opened the file to demonstrate, paying the rather large microtransaction. It dinged merrily a moment later. Ratty paused in loading a fresh cargo of crackers and cheese onto his plate. "Goodness me, it actually worked." Their host crossed his arms. "Of course it worked. The only time it didn't work is when I ambled too far from the Y fidelity." Mole sniffed at the screen, impressed. Why should a compression app need Wi-Fi? Ratty cocked his whiskers. And how could one speed up a processor with money? Toad propped fists on his hips and looked on the verge of performing an opera to himself. "Because time is money. I just said—" Rat pulled up alongside him. "If I may commandeer the mouse, old chap. Thank you. Oh, dearie me. The developer is listed as Wildwood Bloomin' Technologies, if you'll pardon my language." Mole polished his glasses, but found the text on screen remained the same. "Oh, dearie me as well." The rodent stepped away to let the PC's owner take the helm again. "I think you've just paid the weasels to steal all your files." All my files? Even the 3D models I commissioned of myself? But what will I have modified into all of my games?" It appears they're all compressed. Rat waggled a claw down the list of files, all reading less than a kilobyte. I'm so sorry. Mole patted him on the shoulder. Oh, drat! Double drat! The stupid thing! I never did trust it! Toad stomped in place. He then took up the mouse pad and hopped on that as well. Turning from the rampage, Mole tapped his claws together. Isn't there anything that can be done? Badger let out a heavy sigh. Toad! I don't need your piffling parables presently, not when all my precious files have been waylaid! He wilted halfway to the floor in front of the machine. Oh, woe betide my computer! Struck down in its prime! Toad! What is it? Can't you see this cruel twist of fate has brought in the tide or tidings or whatever it is? Badger continued with stalwart patience. There is some hope. You mean you'll storm the weasel's den? You are the only one of us who could carry a server. Now, mind you tote it carefully if it's got all my best data. Do you suppose you could carry it with one hand so you can manage the pummeling as well, if you've not gotten too old? My doctor says I pummel like a badger half my age. However, my lawyer says all pummeling must have a solid legal foundation, which this instance is lacking. Poppycock! The weasels are holding my selfie collection hostage! The greatest hits, Badger! I took the precaution of backing up all your father's critical files onto archival magnetic tapes. They're in a safe deposit box at the post office, along with the contraption for reading them. It may even have one of those newfangled USB connections. He turned to his three companions as a group. Yes, my friends, it'll be a slow process, but with enough access to Toad's wine cellar, I think we could manage it. Dash those dusty old files of father's! What about mine? The older gentleman harumphed. These are Toad Hall's fiscal and historical files, not your personal ones. Those are important to me personally. Rat finished onboarding his snacks and began sorting them into pairings. Perhaps you can download them from your social media accounts. Oh, that's a good notion. Mole patted his boyfriend on the back, looking at their host. After all, you do maintain quite a lot of those. Toad nodded. Yes, that could work. No doubt the denizens of the internet have already crowdsourced them onto the Toad Wiki. I got distracted setting it up, but it does have a world-class gift gallery on the homepage. Money time. Spring hurried into the river bank without even waiting for winter to leave. Impatient little flowers sprung up inches from melting drifts. Snow clung to the stately slate roof of Toad Hall like the last snow-bearing clouds of winter vanishing into a grey sky. Playing the part of the moon in this pantomime of the heavens was a listing satellite dish which, in spite of grand promises, had only ever received the signals from local blenders and kitchen mixers with perfect clarity. A trio of visitors arrived at the front door and pulled the doorbell. Mole gave a wary glance back to the stone pineapple that had overnight tumbled off the roof and smashed flat one of the many topiary replicas of Toad. Ratty patted the surprised creature's arm. Badger grumbled. After no small delay, he rang the doorbell again. Mr. Toad flung open the door, eyes on his mobile phone. Greetings and salutations. I say, you lot made a bit of a racket coming up the path. Badger scoffed. Toad, haven't I told you your masonry is in a sorry state? Your family's hall is tumbling down around your non-existent ears. The amphibious aristocrat chuckled. Oh, Badger, don't be dramatic. It's been holding together for positive ages. Would be quite uncharacteristic for it to come undone now. Mole pointed a claw meekly back to the smashed bushes. I'm afraid it's starting to crumble here and there, Toad. You've a gargoyle glaring out from your hedge. Gave me quite a fright when we walked up the path just now. Webbed hands gripped an imaginary steering wheel. Oh, he only snapped off because a very powerful and expensive electronical motor car glanced the side of the house just so. Could have happened to anybody. Badger cast a gaze around the manor house. I expect you've not started getting quotes for a restoration, but you'd do well to have braces put in. That would at least buy you time. But I am buying time, Badger. Toad waggled his mobile phone. If you'd stop interrupting me, nearly cornered the market on Tuesdays. Tapping at the screen, he waved them indoors. Badger unwrapped his scarf, emblazoned with the golden bee mascot of his old cricket club. What in blazes are you babbling about? Mole scratched his chin. Is this like, whatever was the name of it? Weasel coin? Croaking a laugh, the scion of the great amphibious house waved away the comparison. Ha! Weasel coin crashed days ago. Antiquated notion cryptocurrency. No, I am buying something with real value. Time. With this app, you see, you buy a particular minute of the days of the week. That's why it's called money time. Time is money. I expect you've heard. The waterproof rodent brushed the last of the snow from his boots, then lifted his brow at Badger. Where does that stand on legal grounds? The stocky mustelid wiped the fog from his spectacles with a monogrammed microfiber cloth. Somewhere between Robert Walpole and Prince John. I expect Parliament will deem it a financial crime within the year. Toad returned to poking avidly at his phone. Oh, that won't be good for Monday values. Oh, you know how Monday holders are. Spooked by the slightest bad news. But fear not, I'm putting in a swap for Thursdays now. Ever the ironclad investment Thursday. Ha ha ha! A chime from the device sent him into a quick prance of celebration. An indulgent smile arose on Ratty's lips. If you've patience for a foolish creature like me, Toad, I should like to have it explained how this is any different from NFTs. The amphibian's eyes rolled. Of course it's different from NFTs. The trouble with those was the art. Everybody was always funging it. Can't funge another man's minute and post it online. Not without taking a photo of a clock. His pink fingers mimicked a camera frame around Toad's grandfather's grandfather clock. A small brass toad figurine swung carefree on the pendulum. Toad dropped his jaw in theatrical shock. I say, that's hardly sporting! Without a glance at the melodrama, Badger poured himself a sherry. So you've been sold a bill of goods. Toad slapped him on his broad back. Yes, exactly. I'm glad you at least get it, Badger. Mole propped his thumbs in the little pockets of his vest, framing his soft middle. I suppose this counts as redistribution of wealth. Rather egalitarian in its way. Badger examined the spring light as it filtered through the beverage. Only if he's not distributing it to another rich idler. Egalitarian. Egalitarian. The amphibian set down his phone to mouth the word, taking it for a test drive. Oh, bravo, Mole. And bravo me as well. Egalitarian Toad. I shall have that engraved on my next bust. I have my usual sculptor popping by next week. She's riding high after making those bespoke pencil toppers I presented you all with. Inspired stuff. The rodent shook his whiskered muzzle. Toad! This money-time mania is smoke vending of the worst sort. At least when you were obsessed with parasailing, you had a parasail at the end of it. Perking as his partner's change of tack, Mole bounced brightly. And that lovely neck brace. Oh, yes, money time! He glanced at the incomplete transaction, blinking on his mobile. I say, telephone, do tell me, I mean my friends, what egalitarian means? A robotic voice rattled off the definition. Egalitarian. Adjective. Characterized by a belief in the equality of all creatures, socially and economically. Well, if that doesn't describe, I don't know what does. I'm forever sharing the benefits of my superior brain with ordinary people. For free, no less! Sipping sherry, the elder mustelid turned to their host. Is it possible, Comrade Toad, that your superior brain has forgotten why we were meeting today? Haven't the foggiest. We are here, my good animal, to shovel you out from under the mountain of posts you have allowed to accumulate under your mail slot. He turned so the stripes of his serious face aligned on the unrivaled heap of post office offerings. Oh, that. Toad followed his gaze and became instantly bored at the sight. Well, I suppose we could sift through that, unless you lot would rather engage with some high Italian art with me. I've just downloaded the latest in the Mario Partner video gaming series, you see. I do like those. Molly looked up from fixing a cuff button that had come unbuttoned. Rat, the wearer of the shirt being buttoned, smiled with indulgence. I know, old chap, but we've a job to do. Yes, I suppose you're right, Ratty. The mole gave a bashful chuckle. I do get a bit hardcore for casual games, I know. Don't have to tell me. The rodent patted his boyfriend on the back. Your replica of Toad Hall in Garden Simulator is a sight to behold. Badger gathered a great armload of stamped envelopes from beside the front door. He set them on the card table. He dealt them out into 4 equal piles. The 4 creatures started processing this bumper crop of mail. Having failed to tempt his friends away from work, Mr. Toad resigned himself into sitting on his overstuffed chair and pretending to read the same letter several times. Eventually he quit even this pretense and used his mobile phone to summon a robotic tea service tray from the kitchen. It arrived without spilling a drop or crumb, and only knocking over a single model sailing ship that had a recklessly lowered anchor. Mole dealt a handful of junk mail, finished his portion early, and set about the vicinity, looking for missed mail. I found 2 more correspondences under the Davenport. Toad tossed his solitary letter in the air. Spam, the lot of it! I should like a paper shredder in place of my mail slot for all the good it does me. No, parcels. That's the only thing. Finding his hands free, he saw about buttering one of the newly delivered muffins. After a moment's indecision about whether or not to engage with this latest tomfoolery, Mole poked a claw in the direction of the dining hall. One of those robot vacuum cleaners was trapped under there as well. I felt terrible for the little thing, all out of battery, so I tucked it in safely in its charging station. Rat placed a hand over his heart. Valiant Mole, friend to robots everywhere. Badger opened yet another envelope with his claw. Toad, do you retain a legal team of Possum and McCormick? Toad sat up. Ah! He poked a finger in the air, then let it drop again. It doesn't ring a bell. The mustelid adjusted his reading glasses and peered at the text. This says they're petitioning to have this estate entered on the National Registry on behalf of the Toad Hall Preservation Society. The amphibian nodded brightly, happy to be talking about himself again. Yes, that's me! Badger's expression softened. He reconsidered Toad, as one might a weed that one had assumed to be your prickles, but now produced surprise blossoms. Well, at last you're taking a serious interest in the history of this place. On a little break, Rat sat up from nibbling on cheese and crackers. Hold fast. I saw something about that. Here it is. His pink paws flicked through a stack of mail, finding another formal letter. Here we are. Seems someone is litigating against the Toad Hall Preservation Society pursuant to necessary and vital modifications of the estate. Toad scoffed around an entire muffin, blackcurrant jam falling on the starched collar of his shirt. You know how these solicitous types are, always courting each other. Ratty dusted crumbs from his jumper and studied the heavy paper as his ancestors might a sail. The letterhead says the firm's Mink, Murray and Mink, working on behalf of something called Toad Unlimited. Toad jammed a fifth muffin, strawberry this time. Oh, yes, that's me as well. What? Badger thundered like an insulted god of practicalities. Mole blinked at the uproar. Toad Unlimited? That's the name I use on my more technological endeavours. Toad beamed with pride. Snappy, isn't it? Toad, you must call off your solicitors this instant. Badger replaced the muffin in the amphibian's hands with a phone. To your email, man! Toad's pleasure metamorphosed into dismay at the banishment of his snack. I say, what for? They're perfectly good lawyers. The older gent propped one fist on his hip and dropped a finger of judgment at the younger creature's chest. Yes, and you're on track to send them to jail as an accessory to fraud. And yourself, besides. You're suing yourself, man. Am I? Toad stroked his chin, oblivious to the multiple colours of jam there. I suppose I am. Well, if one is to be sued... He cast the trio a charming grin. Moley tapped his claws together, worriedly. Is it really as bad as all that? Seems an honest mistake to me. Rat didn't look up from his assigned letters. Especially to anyone who's met Toad. Badger pressed a hand to his eyes, trying to avoid seeing the future. No, this is just wasting the court's time, but he'll surely be audited. And he mustn't be audited until we recover the document safe the weasels dropped in the river. Rat gave a fond sigh and gazed into the distance. Ah, the river. Mole stroked his boyfriend's paw, knowing he'd come out of his revelry in due time. And something in those papers has to do with fraud? The elder mustelid tutted. Everything the Weasel Gang does has to do with fraud, and the greater part of it has Toad's signature, especially since he got that confounded auto-signing contraption. Toad looked aghast at this insult to his gadget's honour. Steady on, Badger! All the reviews agree that Jot Buddy Platinum is the finest automated signatory and scribbler ever crowd-funded. Basic. Summer sun lavished the gently swaying canopy over the riverbank in a peaceful warmth, countless leaves aglow like so many battery indicator LEDs. In his sitting room, Rat poured tea, enjoying the quiet company of Mole and Badger. They basked in the merry murmur of the water and the companionable chirp of crickets. The quiet morning was passing nicely as they poked about on their phones. Mole looked up from his device, clad in its dirt-proof case, with mild concern. Ratty, am I basic? The river rat sipped his tea, eyes on a muted YouTube video comparing oarlocks from around the world. Rather basic, yes? Goodness! Moley fidgeted. How can one be sure? His rodent boyfriend paused playback and cast him a fond smile. My good chap, may I direct your attention to the live, laugh, love sign above our bread box? The shorter creature blinked down his long snout at the cursive lettering. Oh, dearie me! Realizing he'd upset the delicate soul, Rat looked up with a reassuring smile. Don't fret, Moley. I'm a late middle-aged gent who owns a small boat. I'm rather basic as well. Badger harumphed. Not worth your attention, Mole. Nothing whatsoever could be more basic than worrying about being basic. He thumbed through yet another historical e-book, this one something to do with irrigation in the Indus Valley civilization. The pair looked in amused surprise at their grey-muzzled companion. "Why, Badger, I didn't know you went in for modern lingo." His striped face rose from reading. Pride quirked the corner of his mouth. "I have gathered the meaning from context, like the berries of the wild wood." Not yet mollified, Mole rubbed his hands into various configurations. "To mend my basic ways, perhaps I could spice things up a trifle." Rat's round little ears perked. "Oh? How so? What did you have in mind, dear fellow?" Unprepared to give detailed remarks, Mole stammered. I only meant, as it were, when well, that is to say, when we, on the occasions when you and I, oh heavens!" With a blush, he sank behind his mobile phone. The rodent leaned on his elbow, watching in adoration. "Mole, please. Vanilla is my kink. You mustn't tease me so." With a gruff rumble of amusement, Badger reached for another homemade cream cake from the tea tray. A series of distant skids and crashes came closer and closer along the river road. Some passer-by hollered about the basket of wild mushrooms she dropped, diving out of the way of an unseen lunatic. "Hello!" a voice called outside the front door, accompanied by the high-pitched whine of an all-terrain electric penny farthing. The plump figure of Mr. Toad appeared in the open doorway. "I say! Hello, you fellows!" "Toady, dropped by for tea, have you? Just as well. We were wondering how we'd finish all these cream cakes." Ratty offered a half-full tray. "Oh, my good rodent, I don't have time for cream cakes, you say? Well, it wouldn't do to be rude by refusing. Have to uphold the good name of Toad Hall and all that." He shoved two of the bite-sized pastries into his mouth. Dabs of whipped cream blasted off in several directions. "Woohoo! I say, Ratty, I don't know why you go messing about with boats all day when you could be making these scrumptious confections." "I shall give your advice every consideration it deserves." Rat brushed a spot of filling off his vest. "Did you hurry over just to act as my life coach, or was there something else?" "Ah, yes." The newcomer hopped to attention. "Gentlemen, I have decided that we are to become a polymer." Hefting a tablet from his satchel, he drew lines between photos of their faces. Badger's sagely eyebrows rose. "If I recall my biology lessons, we are various sorts of polymers already. DNA, for one. I seem to recall most, if not all, proteins are." The amphibian tutted. "Oh, Badger, what are you babbling about?" Mole blinked, cleaned his speckles, and studied the diagram again. "Toad, do you by chance mean polycule?" Toad tilted his head back in despair. No. This is about relationships, not atoms. Polyamore. Polyamory indeed. Badger slapped the arm of his chair. "Toad, you vainglorious nincompoop. You're like a son to me, and an infuriating one at that. Why would I want to date you?" A sudden chuckle bounced from Toad. "What? I don't want to date any of you. But then I suppose such misunderstandings are to be expected, given you're all single. No, this is about emotional support." "Oh, terribly single," Rat winked at his lover. After a bashful giggle, Mole tapped a claw to his lips as he considered how to decline delicately. "Toady, we do already give you a lot of emotional support, and, well—" The river rat steepled his fingers, then tipped them at the amphibious aristocrat. "And you're only passable at giving it back." "Humph!" Toad propped his hands on his hips. "Well, that's a fine thing to say to your polymerizer." With a steadying shot of tea, Badger recovered enough to lean forward in his chair, his hands holding steady on the armrests. Toad, you've never shown a whit of interest in anyone other than yourself. Are you telling us you no longer think you're asexual? Mole spread his claws in a shrug. Aromantic, I always thought. Rat rolled his eyes. Autoromantic is more like it. With a blink, Mr. Toad latched onto the change in topic. His hands instinctively gripped an imagined steering wheel. I do love a good auto, vroom vroom and whatnot. A chuckle squeaked from Ratty. Why, the best match would be to clone him. The amphibian gasped, impressed. Now there's a capital idea. Wouldn't have to spread myself so thin. Badger took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Please, Ratty, don't suggest such dreadful things.
This was Toad at Toad Hall, written by Tempo, a fluffy dog in a cowboy hat. Read by Khaki, your faithful fireside companion. As always, you can find more stories on the web at thevoice.dog, or find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to The Voice of Dog.